At first glance, it looks like a deep blue spot in the river. People usually flock into the area, ready to swim and dive into the clear and seemingly safe water. But here's the twist. Beneath the surface lies a huge underwater cave. This spot isn't just risky in Texas. It's actually considered one of the most dangerous places on the entire planet. Yes, you heard that right. But why, you might ask? Well, this is Fatal Tragedies with the story of Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear. But before then, first things first, the enigmatic Jacob's Well. Now, the story goes that in the mid-1850s, a settler arrived in Texas seeking a spot for a water-powered mill between San Antonio and Austin. While exploring along a creek, he noticed a rough area in the water resembling a bubbling cauldron. This turned out to be Jacob's Well, an outflow from a karst spring connected to the Trinity Aquifer. Jacob's Well initially had a powerful flow, creating an upside-down waterfall on the surface. A mill was built to harness this natural force, operating for decades until mid-20th century construction damaged the aquifer. The reduced outflow revealed the cavern beneath, turning Jacob's Well into a 12-foot diameter blue hole in the riverbed. The limestone rock, eroded with water, formed a large underground cave beyond what's visible in the river. Despite initial difficulty exploring due to strong currents, divers eventually delved into Jacob's Well, discovering its true size. While many enjoy swimming and cliff jumping into the river, Jacob's Well has gained notoriety as one of the deadliest diving sites globally, with tragic incidents marking its reputation over the years. The spring opening in the creek bed leads to Jacob's Well Cave, descending vertically about 30 feet before continuing at an angle. This cave system comprises silted chambers separated by narrow passages, reaching an average depth of 120 feet. Cave diving risks. Divers from the Jacob's Well Exploration Project have explored and mapped the cave, revealing two main conduits. The first passage extends approximately 4,500 feet from the surface, reaching a maximum depth of 137 feet. The second passage branches off from the primary conduit, spanning around 1,000 feet. While the cave attracts open water divers, not all possess the necessary training and equipment required for cave diving. Tragically, between 1964 and 1984, 9 deaths occurred at Jacob's Well due to inexperienced divers attempting to explore its depths without the required cave diving skills. This underscores the importance of proper training and equipment for those venturing into this captivating but perilous underwater cave system. Now, on the night of September 9th, 1979, 2 adventurous divers, Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear, along with a group of divers from Pasadena, set up camp at Jacob's Well in Wimberley. The mission? To explore the mysterious cave system. Eager to dive ahead of the large group and avoid disturbing the sediment, Kent and Mark entered the water at 23:30 while others set up camp. A dangerous descent and tragic consequences. Kent and Mark, both experienced divers in their early 20s, aimed not just to dive into the cave, but to reach the last recorded chamber, known for its deadly history. As they descended through the first chamber, they navigated a 30-foot drop to a bare rock platform. Moving sideways into the second chamber, they encountered a long, sloping environment. Chamber 2 led to the birth canal at around 75 feet, a narrowing passage into Chamber 3. Here, they found other divers exploring what was considered the last safe chamber. Undeterred, Mark and Kent had their eyes set on a more challenging prize. Chamber 4, a location with a tragic history that had claimed the lives of 4 other divers. Descending the sloping gravel floor to the entrance of Chamber 4 at around 90 feet deep, they reach depths where divers can experience nitrogen narcosis. This neurological effect, akin to the impact of drinking martinis, becomes more pronounced with depth. Kent, affected by nitrogen narcosis, took over the scuba gear, turned around, and backed into the tunnel leading to Chamber 4. Mark followed suit. Jay Moy, another diver in Chamber 3, observed Mark's questionable move without cave gear or a proper light. Joe, aware that Kent and Mark's steel tanks held less air than his aluminum ones and being deeper, understood the increased air consumption. So he attempted to catch Mark's attention, flashing his light in concern and banging on his tank with a knife to grab their attention. But there was no response. Mark and Kent, seemingly with tunnel vision, continued into the tunnel. For Joe, he knew that this would well mean the end for them. In an attempt to guide them back, he left one of his torches at the entrance to Chamber 4, hoping the two divers would follow it to find their way out. Upon reaching the surface, the once clear water of the well turned murky, possibly due to a gravel slide or the frantic movements of two divers in panic. Joe couldn't shake the grim realization that it was highly likely that Kent and Mark had met a tragic end in the unforgiving depths of Jacob's Well. He informed other divers of the unsettling events, setting the stage for a search and recovery mission. The hope for a rescue lingered in Joe's heart, but the harsh reality suggested otherwise. A call echoed through the local law enforcement channels, reaching Paul Batiglia, a police officer and seasoned cave diver. At the police station, he swiftly organized the rescue mission upon receiving the call. An hour later, he arrived at the home of Don Dibble, a former Navy diver, cave diving expert, and owner of the local dive shop. Both Batiglia and Dibble are members of the Hayes County Volunteer Body Recovery Unit, and they understood the grim reality. This is not just a rescue, it's a body recovery. In a somber discussion, Dibble and Batiglia planned the operation, knowing the challenges they will face. Despite the distinction between rescue and recovery, their course of action remained similar. They called upon other members of the recovery unit, headed to Dibble's dive shop for necessary equipment, and made their way to Jacob's Well, just 15 minutes away. As they arrived at the site, darkness still blankets the surroundings. The group from Pasadena, already in the water, reported to Dibble that they haven't been able to recover either Mark or Kent. They started their brief that the two divers might be inside Chamber 4. Their certainty seemed from one diver's claim of witnessing equipment buried under a gravel slide in the passage leading down into Chamber 4. But what had happened? Kent and Mark had excavated the tunnel by shoveling loose gravel, risking their lives for the sake of exploring a few more square feet of submerged limestone. And so they were buried deep beneath Chamber 4 now. The stage was set for a challenging and crucial operation in the depths of Jacob's Well. How, you ask? The only safe retrieval method involved airlifting all the gravel out of the cave, starting from the top of the slope and working down. Talk about a heck of a lot of work, right? In an attempt to improve the challenging conditions, the recovery process took an unfortunate turn for the worse. Don Dibble, receiving conflicting reports about the feasibility of the mission, decided to descend into the well himself. Accompanied by Game Warden Calvin Turner, they left spare tanks at depths of 25 and 75 feet, while unreeling safety lines to guide them further into the well. To ensure the bodies were not floating above them, they directed their lights upward into the ceiling crevice of the third room. The entrance where the two divers had last been seen remained blocked. Don, aware of his remaining air supply, checked his submersible pressure gauge, showing 1,100 pounds per square inch, enough for approximately 10 minutes at that depth. With caution, he placed his head and shoulders into the entrance, gripping the safety line with one hand and illuminating the passage with the other. To his dismay, all he could see were small pieces of gravel striking his mask lens due to the water's flow through the constriction. The elusive sight of the missing divers remained hidden in the depths of Jacob's Well. Gravel bed. And the realization that removing the bodies hinged on clearing the unstable gravel bed, Don Dibble understood the perilous situation. However, it was too late. He became ensnared in the passage entrance due to a gravel slide. The water turned murky, obscuring visibility, and Don found himself trapped with his arms immobilized, unable to signal or bang on his tank. As he struggled, his breathing quickened and he rapidly ran out of air. Confronting the inevitability of his impending demise, Don remained remarkably composed, attempting to meet his fate quietly. Uncertain about the drowning process and its implications, he considered hastening it by either inhaling or drinking water. Fearing panic and thrashing if he inhaled water, which would cause embarrassment for his wife, he chose to drink the suffocating water. As he took a few gulps, dizziness set in and he resigned himself to his fate. In a sudden turn of events, an involuntary reflex prompted him to thrash around, freeing himself through his flooded mask. Calvin Turner, recognizing the dire situation, offered Don the regulator from the spare tank. Breathing in the welcomed air, Don found relief. However, as he ascended to the surface, a new set of problems emerged. The excessive air intake while diving caused some of it to enter his stomach rather than his lungs. The decreasing water pressure as he rose made the trapped air expand, adding a new layer of complexity to the already harrowing experience. Attempting to release the trapped air by burping proved unsuccessful for Don. Realizing the risk of decompression sickness and the urgency to ascend, he endured unbearable pain caused by the expanding gas. Upon surfacing, he displayed a physically distended abdomen resembling a woman 9 months pregnant. Removing his breathing regulator, Don let out a scream, but relief did not come until 12 hours later. Don's rare diving injury puzzled those around him, resembling some form of embolism where expanding air gets trapped in the lungs. The recommended treatment, a simulated dive in a recompression chamber, took place at Brooke Army Medical Center. Unfortunately, the severe pain persisted, prompting a transfer to another hospital. Here, X-rays revealed a startling diagnosis. His stomach wall had ruptured, leading to peritonitis. Astonishingly, Don should have already succumbed to a condition equivalent to having 5 ruptured appendixes. When the surgeon opened his swollen abdomen, it was akin to cutting into a basketball, highlighting the severity of his internal injuries. During Don's recovery from surgery, the search for the missing bodies persisted. Don Broad, a seasoned diver from Austin, known for his gruff and opinionated nature, took on the task. Despite his tough exterior, he had harbored a deep fascination with Jacob's Well since his childhood in El Campo. At 46 years old, he dove down deep to the opening of the last passage and peered inside. Spotting Dibble's dropped light, he observed a corridor filled with gravel, speculating that it contained the bodies. Realizing that Kent and Mark probably worked really hard to dig the tunnel by shoveling loose rocks that later had them perished, Broad decided the safest way to get the rocks out of the cave was to use the helicopter. They would airlift all the gravel out of the cave, starting from the top of the slope and working their way down. 2 days later, a flatbed truck arrived at Jacob's Well, carrying a white recompression chamber resembling a space capsule. This chamber, owned by Schaefer Diving Company, was brought in by the victims' families to retrieve the bodies. Louis Schaefer, the company owner, expressed optimism about the operation's success and became the first diver to descend. Visible from the surface until he reached the juncture at 25 feet, he exclaimed, "God Almighty," upon seeing the entrance to the final passage, signaling the challenges that lay ahead. Later that afternoon, Lewis's divers used a large hose to suction gravel from the 60-foot level, spewing it into Cypress Creek downstream from the well. Larger rocks were placed into burlap bags, tied to ropes by volunteer scuba divers, and hauled to the surface. Despite their persistent efforts, the challenging task proved arduous, as every foot of gravel removed seemed to be replaced by another. Despite difficulties, they continued their work diligently. Financial constraints led to a temporary halt in the search operation. When divers resumed after 2 days, they discovered that the opening they had diligently cleared for a week had nearly closed up again in their absence. Faced with the daunting realization that their efforts could last for weeks or months and with no compensation for their work, the situation seemed increasingly futile. A second opinion from a group of divers sent by Chet Brooks from Brown and Root affirmed what Lewis's team had reluctantly admitted to themselves. The most prudent course of action was to leave the bodies undisturbed and seal off Jacob's Well. 12 days after Kent Maupin and Mark Brashear tragically perished, the search for their bodies was officially terminated. Several months later, after his recovery, in January of 1980, Don, eager to prevent others from facing the same fate as Kent and Mark, took action at Jacob's Well. Bags of concrete were lowered into the cave, and over several hours, he built a wall over the entrance of the fourth chamber. The wall incorporated a metal grate, allowing water to flow while sealing the bodies inside. Surprisingly, this deterrent proved ineffective. Some divers equipped with the necessary tools removed the grate, leaving a message for Dawn on a plastic slate that read, "You can't keep us out." With the grate removed, divers continued to explore Jacob's Well, pushing the limits of its deeper section. 4 years after Kent and Mark's deaths, and 3 years after the gate installation, 2 members of an advanced diving class at Texas State University, Richard and Clark, aimed to complete a challenging dive. They navigated through the first 2 chambers and the third, reaching the squeeze where the gate had been installed. It's unclear whether divers had removed the gravel or if water flow had widened the crevice, but by the time Richard and Clark dived, it was accessible. Removing their air tanks, they shimmied backward through the narrow crevice. Clark's tanks got snagged on rocks, and despite efforts, he had to let them go to join Richard on the other side. Richard handed Clark his regulator, and they began buddy breathing, marking the end of their exploration for that day. What happened next is a story for another day. A decade after Mark and Kent's incident, most of Mark's remains were found, bringing some closure. Unfortunately, Kent's body was never recovered. Exactly 21 years later, Kent's remains were finally discovered, providing his family the closure that they had sought for so long, and he could be laid to rest. Now, before you go, here's a question to ponder. What secrets might still be hidden within Jacob's Well, waiting for the next daring adventurer to uncover? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next intriguing dive. If you found this exploration of the mysterious underwater cavern fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more thrilling adventures. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring the wonders of our world.